My guest today is Jenny, who is the co-founder of Pink Shark PR, a Los Angeles-based agency that champions women founders, executives, and leaders. Her clients are regularly featured in elite media outlets like Forbes, Fast Company, Fortune, and the LA Times. She is forever a girl's girl and really wanting women to dominate the media, share their stories, and ultimately get comfortable with visibility and taking up real space. So, if that sounds like something you want to do, this episode is for you. So, let's dive in. Welcome to the Fox Talks Business Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Fox, money mentor, business coach, and author. If you're a business owner who's been around the block but still feels stuck in the financial fog or hustling without getting real results, well, you're in the right place. Each week, I'm going to dive into money mastery, mindset shifts, and real-world strategies to help you grow and profit sustainably. You're going to hear unfiltered conversations, bold ideas, and practical, proven ways to start growing your business. So if you're ready to break past the plateau, make more, stress less, and have fun doing it, let's dive in. All right, Foxy listeners, you have been asking about how you can get seen more and how you can get people to pay attention to you. And I'm not the person to answer those questions. So I found one who is. Jenny, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is so exciting to be here.
So I, of course, have been deep diving you while I was, trying to find somebody to, to sort of cover these topics. But can you give us a little bit of history for you, those that are just meeting you for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the co-founder and president of Pink Shark PR. It's a PR agency in Los Angeles, sunny LA, a little bit too sunny LA right now. It's been so hot. And I've been doing this work for more than 15 years. It's one of those things that really unfolded organically for me. Before this company, I had a copywriting business. And I was always really excited to tell stories, to tell people's stories, especially to tell women in leadership roles, whether they were founders or executives, and tell their stories too. And, it was one of those things where I was writing with clients and collaborating with clients. And I was like, gosh, more people need to hear about them. And I remember I went to one of my clients. I said, this is going so well. Don't you think like TechCrunch or somebody should know about this? And they were like, yeah, I guess. So I emailed TechCrunch and they responded in like 30 seconds and asked for an interview. And it's a very organic way of discovering that storytelling and visibility and having people see you was just so critical to whatever else you're doing in business or marketing or creative work, whatever it is. And so it started my passion for a true communications career at that point.
Well, and I think it's so true. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to, have you come on the show because I think, we all want that, obviously. The day and age that we're in, trying to get attention is sort of almost another full-time job as an entrepreneur. But I think one of the things that people really struggle with is just that. How do I get more media coverage for my business? Because they think the same thing, like, oh yeah, like of course I want other people to know about me, but like, who wants to know and what do they want to know? So, talk to us a
Sure.
little bit about that.
So I think it's really important to understand that PR is an arm of marketing, but it is not marketing in the sense where you're running Instagram ads or Facebook ads or something like that. PR is the best way I can describe it. It is about building a communications bridge between your company and the general public. And the representatives of the general public are going to be the reporters who you're working with that have interest in that beat or whatever industry that you're in. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people do in general when they decide they want to do PR is they want to kind of, whip it like a horse. Like, I'm doing this, I want to see results like I would see on Instagram, or I want to be able to tinker with ads. You can't tinker with human beings. And so what we are having to do, what you have to do is you have to slow down. You have to tell really good stories and really good stories that are not about yourself, that are about the public, about your audience, about who you're trying to reach. I always tell my clients we have to tell the story beyond the story. Products are not interesting. How you make money is not interesting. I have a lot of founders that'll say to me, "Oh, I just hit, my first, $100,000 month, or I just had this, or I just had whatever that is." That is not newsworthy. So the distinction that people have to make is what's newsworthy, what would you want to read, and how is that going to benefit your audience, as opposed to trying to use it as a self-promotional tool. And the kicker is, if you spend your time building authentic relationships with reporters, if you spend your time telling stories that do nothing but enhance, empower, inform your target audience, and you make it about them and not you, you will never be at a lack for opportunities to tell your story, to be visible. Your company will flourish. Where people run into trouble is where they are like, well, we have a product launch or we have this milestone. And a lot of times what an executive thinks is something that I should pitch or go out with as a PR piece is really an internal memo. It's really
Right.
something for the internal comms team, not the external comms team.
I think that's just it. Like, we constantly think, well, if I tell people my story, that maybe like I will inspire them, or maybe
Yeah.
like my story will inspire them. But I think for the most part, people are like, yeah, but how is this going to help me?
Wrong. So the founder story is the most important piece of it, but it has to tie to empowering them. So, for example, if you have a founder story, because I rely on founder stories a ton, you're absolutely correct. The difference would be tying the founder story into this is my product, this is what I do, this is the only thing I care about, and tying your founder story into I see the struggle or I understand what you're going through because I've been there and here's some advice. It's a very different vibe, but you are exactly spot on that the personal story is far more important than the business story.
Because people can connect with it more, right? They understand,
Yeah.
you can kind of go, oh, they do get what it's like at my level. They
Yes.
were here at one point, because I
Yes.
think, a lot of people and a lot of people who are listening right now are like, yeah, that old adage, well, that you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't know what it's like to struggle, right? Like,
Sure.
you don't know
Sure.
what it's, to like to kind of go without. So I think it is, I love that you're saying it. It's really about that connection piece. How can you connect with, with those people? And sometimes products just don't necessarily do that on their own, right?
No, I mean, when's the last time you were like, God, you know what I'd really love to read about? An app update. N-
Yeah.
Never.
Me, it's
Absolutely never.
me, it's always when I like see ads for perfume, I'm always like, there's I don't know what it is, but the majority of them I'm like, what does it smell like? Like, would you
Yes,
just,
yes,
there's like somebody like in Paris or whatever, like they're jumping through water and I'm like, and then it ends and I'm like, well, that was beautifully constructed, but like, is it floral? Is it
yes,
spicy? Is it, what the hell does it
yes.
smell
That is
like?
such
I've
a great
never gone to smell them,
example.
but
No, as an elder millennial, I really miss the days when we just had so many magazines, like with the little
oh
flap.
yeah.
Doesn't smell. Yeah, like I really miss that. It smells. I can think of that now. It smells like my high school locker, like a stack of magazines I probably shouldn't have been reading. Like it's.
I remember like opening those up and just like a little drops of water and like
Yeah,
actually you could get a lot of uses out of those. I'm just saying.
you can. You can. And when you're like 16, that is so baller.
Well, one of the things that I think a lot of business owners, I mean, we're kind of joking about, some of the ads and stuff like that. But I think that one of the things, especially because the majority of my audience is women, is, we're sort of feeling like, is this something that I need to do? So talk to us about why women need to start prioritizing PR and
Yeah.
how do they go about doing that?
Oh, girl, this is like the hill that I die on. Women have such a tricky relationship with visibility.
Hmm.
And it's so funny, and I've talked about this a lot, but I think it's so important for your listeners to hear that, kind of from behind the scenes. I love to work with women. I also work with men who are amazing. They have a little bit of a higher standard though, that they've got to really, they got to show me that they are okay with female leadership. And I always ask clients when they come on board the same question. I want to know, there's a few things I want to know. I want to know, where did you struggle? Like, where did you struggle that sucked so bad that you can completely laugh about now? But I also ask them, what makes you exceptional? What makes you amazing? What makes you the person that should be leading this company or leading this conversation? And when I ask the men that, there is no beat in their response. There's not a single pause. And I mean, we go way back. We go back to what their mom said. We go back to how well they did in elementary school. There's no loss, generally speaking, they kind of own where they feel like they really excel. When I ask my female clients the same questions, I mean, I could be looking at somebody who has multiple graduate degrees from Ivy League schools, has raised $100 million of venture capital, has already been in the press, and they really struggle to tell me why they're exceptional. They feel
Hmm.
like it's mocking, or that it's shameful in a way, that it's arrogant. They try to downplay their achievements because for some reason that's not, they want to be humble, or they want to whatever. And so, to the women listening, you have got to own your genius, because you cannot be an objective leader. You cannot be an objective business owner if you are not able to stand up and say, "Hey, no, I'm the one you should be talking to about that. I'm really great at this." There's no room for this fake humility and not really owning or getting caught up in our own conditioning, which granted, it's not our fault. It's just the way society has kind of, trudged along, but we're past that. And in order to have your clients trust you, your customers trust you, the media trust you, the media does not want to talk to you if you're not an expert. Why
Hmm.
would they talk to just some, Joe Blow about a topic? Because for a while, I would have, female clients that would be like, well, expert is a strong word. No, it's not. It's what you are. And it's also the only reason that they would interview you for this article anyway. So it is really critical that women get very comfortable with visibility, because it's essential for your business. Telling a public narrative is essential. People who are not doing any kind of work on the public narrative, they think, well, I just don't have a public narrative.
Hmm.
You do. It's just that the internet controls it without any guidance from you at this point. So it's just very critical that women, business leaders and owners and founders, that they take control of that narrative, that they jump into feeling, not, you don't have to feel comfortable, but you do have to do it and start learning how to own your genius, because that is actually the most professional way to run your business.
Well, and I think we get stuck with those, sort of titles. And I remember like even working with my clients, a lot of people go, well, how do you, like, I mean, I do this business and stuff. And I'd be like, okay, well, like you're a professional. Well, like I'm kind of new at it. And I'm like, the literal definition between like a hobbyist and a professional is that you're paid for whatever it is that you do. That's
Exactly.
it. Like,
Exactly.
that's it. There's nothing more than that. There's no like underwriting, there's no small print. Like that's it. That's just it.
No, no.
And but we do like we get kind of stuck. And I remember like way back, like when I was like first like starting my career, it was, I was like super shy about it because I was going, I was in accounting. And even when I started my business, it was very male dominated. And I shrunk for a lot of years because I was like, I'm just going to fly under the radar. I'm not trying to stir feathers. And I wish, in hindsight, I would have stirred as much as I do now. Cause now I'm like, pass me a spoon, let's go. Right? Like,
I love
which
that.
I had that back then, but I was like, no, I am supposed to be, prim and proper and always say the right thing and be calm in my voice and,
Right.
not get too loud. And, we tend to, sort of fall in that. So it's very refreshing to constantly hear people be like, no, stand in your power, stand in your
Yeah.
expertise and don't be shy about saying it because, you've owned it, you've worked that, you've created that, you've earned that right.
I want to hear more women say, I deserve to be here and I love money. If I could hear women saying those two things a lot more, then I would know that that is really starting to heal in us as a collective.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true because I deal with a lot of my clients around money. And I mean, they'll always say, like, oh, money just feels like a dirty word. And I'm like, well, wash it then. Like, and
Oh my
move on.
God. What
Like
a float.
like it's really that simple,
Yeah.
it's not being greedy,
No,
if
no.
you store it all like Scrooge McDuck and you don't let anybody touch it and you don't do anything with it, that's greed. But you can do a
Exactly.
lot of amazing things, like why do we like shy away from it and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
I'm with
Exactly.
you. I'm with you on that one too, for sure. But I mean, it's a hard thing to kind of overcome. And I think, some of our listeners might be sitting there and kind of going, okay, like I do, I do know that I have expertise and stuff. I do know that I want to get my story out. I want to help other people, but how do I know which story to use, or how to even like, you were saying about like product doesn't catch up, but story catches attention. How do you
Yeah.
figure that out?
It's funny. You are going to have to use multiple angles. So, like a lot of times when I'll bring on new clients, they'll say to me, like, well, which story do you want me to use? And it's like, well, I'm going to have to use all of them because this is going to take a minute. It's before all of the recent, journalism layoffs that we had seen, we were already at a 7-to-1 ratio of PR professionals or founders who were pitching to reporters. They don't have that exact number now, but it's been estimated that that has now at least doubled. So you're
Wow.
looking at 14, founders, PR reps, whoever to one reporter. So they get a ton of emails. And in the age of AI too, people are always talking about, well, what stands out or how does AI affect this? And it's really just all noise because the reality is the fundamentals of storytelling and communications, and my God, just like honest to God, like wholesome relationship building. Those things are not affected by technology. And if anything, the old school ways of doing things are really standing out more as everything becomes, AI-atized and everybody is using, bots for this or whatever, a personal message goes a long way. So it's really important to think about maybe 5 or 6 different stories, 5 or 6 different angles that you have, because a story that you would sell to, let's say, TechCrunch is very different than a story that you would sell to Business Insider, very different than a story that you would probably put on somebody's Substack or whatever. So you have to see that your story, you kind of have your evergreen story, that it's your elevator pitch that you would be able to tell anybody, in a couple sentences, but you have to know how to adapt that story for each audience. So I don't want people to worry so much about what story do I tell. You're going to go out with like 5 or 6 different angles. You're going to target reporters that would be interested in that particular angle, and you're going to see what sticks. And a lot of times you're going to be surprised because reporters obviously have their finger on the pulse of what's timely, of what's trending. They're going to come back to you a lot of the time and say, well, that's cool or whatever. What do you think about X, Y, and Z? Because they'll be thinking about something in your industry. And then you building that relationship where they start to see you as a potential trusted source. But honestly, if you've never done any of this before you even ask anybody for anything, making a few genuine connections, read. I know this sounds really simple and kind of mundane, but a lot of people pitch reporters and they have never read their work. They
Mm.
don't, and reporters move beats a lot, especially with layoffs I've mentioned. Get familiar with a few reporters, their work, their headlines, because the thing is, when you start pitching, you're going to want those pitches to sound just like the headlines they would publish. You're going to want that subject line to sound just like it. And get familiar, become supportive. When I started the agency, I did not have any real media contacts, just like a few people here and there. And I built those relationships cold before I had clients that would really need, to work with them. It was just like, hey, started this agency. I have been following your work. I really love this. I'd like to stay connected, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do that as a business owner now. You can pick 3, 4 reporters that cover, and the best way to do this is find an article that you have a little bit of FOMO over. If you're like,
Right.
how did you get in there? I do this, just a little bit of and start building those genuine connections. Like reporters are on LinkedIn, ever since X went through its, midlife crisis, most of the reporters used to be on Twitter. And then they kind of left in droves, and now they're being forced to interact on LinkedIn, which they did not want to do. And now they're on LinkedIn. It goes a long way to say hello, to share an article, to, build a connection in that way. And that's one of the easiest ways to start getting what I like to call champions of your business.
Well, and I think it's so true. Like, as a podcast host, when I get pitched, I can't tell you how many times and how, like, now I hit delete more than I like respond to stuff because I'm like, I can probably tell in like 3 words whether it was a copy and paste.
Sure.
Especially if the wrong name is in there or the wrong data, or like
Yeah.
I just got one the
Yeah.
other day that it was like, congratulations on your 50th episode. And I was like, we're at 276. Thanks for coming out. Right? Like I was like,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
my first thought was, where is that data?
Yeah. So funny.
And then delete,
Part
right?
part of doing it well is just, kind of avoiding like the stupid mistakes,
Yeah.
like know what you're talking about.
Well, and I think I love that, like, that genuine connection, because I think it goes a long way. Like you were saying before, it's not about necessarily always about just you and your story and what you're trying to accomplish, but
Right.
also kind of reframing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like reframing in your mind, this is kind of like what I want to, say to the media, but then also thinking like, how does this help them? Because obviously, they want your story to help them. I mean, they're not, I mean, they're doing this for a reason as well on the other end of it.
Exactly. I think it's important to remember, kind of to my first point, journalists are not marketers. They're not there to serve your business. They uphold a very important role in our free society. They have their job is not to make you look good. Their job is to tell the truth and to tell
Mhm.
stories that are interesting and that they feel like the public either has a right to know or needs to know. And what is beautiful about that is because one of the things that's coming up in my industry is people are asking, can we get, I hate this phrase, but can we get the reporter to do X, Y, and Z? Can we send them something to do X, Y, and Z? I'm like, no,
Mm.
this isn't Russia. You can't do that. No. And so I think like really understanding a journalist's role, because what's beautiful about that is if you do get placed in the media and it's earned, I'm not talking about sponsored posts. I think sponsored posts have their place, but that's advertising, not earned media. Your earned media is that much more valuable. And we see that over and over again in the KPIs and in the metrics. When it's earned, it is that much more valuable because the reporter didn't have to say one nice thing about your business. The reporter saw something that was positive. If they wrote a positive article, which is obviously what we strive to do, if they wrote a positive article, it is because they genuinely believed something positive was there that the public either A, had a right to know or should know. And I think that that is what is so exciting about this. And I think that so many business owners, yeah, and get, I mean, honestly, like I am a business owner as well. Like there's a lot of pressure owning your, you can get caught up in the, you don't mean to be self-centered, but you're thinking about revenue, you're thinking about bills, you're thinking about payroll. Like you can become your own cacophony of noise.
Right.
And when you kind of step out of that and you realize that the journal there to do their job, you're doing your job, and if it meets in the middle in that beautiful way, one New York Times article, one Business Insider article, one Fast Company article can drive revenue for 6 years into your
Hmm.
business. And so I think that understanding, and obviously, obviously we could have a much larger on the current media landscape, in the United States right now. But I do think that a lot of people don't understand what the reporter's role truly is. And if you work with it and respect it, the outcome is really sensational for business and for revenue and customer acquisition and all of it.
Well, and I think too, like, sort of focusing more on this area, especially these days, is so much more key because I remember years ago, like the accolades was like awards that you would get,
Sure.
right? Like if you could win, you know, whatever it was in your area or nationally or whatever, that held a lot of clout. And I'm finding myself, and I mean, you're more in this than I am, but I'm finding myself, because awards have kind of gotten to a pay to play
Sure.
kind of thing, and they're kind of like bought now, that there's really like no credit, like there's no credit for that anymore. It's like, well, did you actually earn this, or did you just like pay to kind of have the advertising or whatever? So
Sure.
that this strategy is something, like you said, it's more of that like organic recognition, if that's kind of a right term for it.
Definitely. It is. It's that earned media is organic recognition and you cannot buy it. And while that can frustrate founders so much, when they see that, they could pay for a sponsored post, but obviously it's marked as sponsored. But when they see how the audience reacts and they see what kind of visibility they get when it's not bought and paid for, they really do understand then the value of earned media and PR, because it's not, like I said at the beginning of this call, like it's not something that is as easy to put your finger on as measuring, SEO or measuring, Facebook ads or whatever that is. But the outcomes are so much bigger. I have clients now that when they hired us, they were doing a little bit of combination of, paid ads and then PR. And they just found out over time, as we built momentum, as we built the reputation, that it was just worth it to just do the earned media, because the results of the earned media pieces themselves just, it was just so much more fruitful than just relying on paid ads.
So we had talked a little bit briefly before about, how women sort of don't own their expertise and are a little bit shy about that. In some of the stuff when I was diving in, you had talked about like, sort of paying attention to what some of the men are pitching that's getting done, and sort of having that reality. Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot for this because I'm trying
Yeah,
not to like say the whole thing, but I think it's interesting to sort of give a perspective of like, look, if this person can pitch this,
yes.
you can do your thing.
I have so many stories that I'm gonna let you lead the witness here a little bit and tell me what, because I'm like, I could, girl,
Do
I'll let
any of them. It doesn't matter to me, because even if it's one I haven't heard, I think that they're all fantastic.
So one of the stories I like to tell, it's a little bit different than when you asked, but it was one of those like the audacity. I had a client who, and I want to just say for the record, I have amazing men on my roster now that have been with us for a long time, but I have some that have, have tried my resolve. And I had one founder, and again, I have so much like empathy for founders. I know what it's like. I know the ups and downs of a business. But I had one founder that was just off the chain and wanted this story, and that's the other thing. Don't tell your PR person which story you should pitch. Like let them decide, whatever. But was just really hell bent on this story that should have been an internal email and wanted TechCrunch to pick it up. So, I went to my contacts at TechCrunch at the time and I was like, look, hello, I've got this. I don't, let me know what you think, or if there's something we could attach this to. Because I also can't go to a reporter and just pretend that I don't know that I'm pitching a dumb story. Like there are many, I only have like 15 people, everyone's getting laid off. There's like 15 people left, and they just really appreciate the candid honesty, because when you have good relationships, they'll say, okay, but like, what about this? And you can maneuver. So I was like, tell me what you think about this. And they were like, no, we're going to pass. And then they wanted to just pass for now, not forever. Nothing is forever, but they wanted to pass for now on figuring out a story for that client. And so I went back to him and I said, hey, TechCrunch is going to pass for now. For now, this isn't, it's kind of what we talked about. And he was like, I want TechCrunch to know that I am never going to let them publish this story. And I said, well, I think that's going to work out very well then, since they don't want to publish it at all ever anyway.
Anyway.
So I think we're on the same page. And I was like, I cannot imagine, because we hire partners and people to work with and whatnot and whatnot. And I can't imagine hiring somebody for their expertise, hearing no, pushing my agenda anyway, and I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, you're paying for it. So if you want me to spend my time doing this, I'll try. And then saying, like, you're never going to get to interview me, the cat's meow. And I'm just like, more women need to get out here, because I have never had, I have never had to put a female client in a corner after an email and be like, if you embarrass me again, we are leaving this restaurant. Like I've never had to do that with my amazing women clients, but I have had a few men that I have had to be like, if you talk to a reporter like that again, we're done. Like we are done.
Yeah.
And so it's a level of just like audacity. And so I'm like, okay, women, like you're actually experts. You know how to people very well. You have no reason to be sitting on the sidelines. And because also like a lot of your larger competitors that may be male owned and operated, or maybe not, a lot of the larger competitors that you might have are probably not doing PR. That's like one thing that I've noticed, that sometimes people feel like they're little, like they're too busy, or that's not something they want to do. So startups and small businesses can really make a dent in the online conversation, especially if their larger competitors are sitting it out. So women have to get out there.
Well, and I think that's good to know too, because I think a lot of times people go, well, I'm too small. I'm not a huge corporation. I don't have, a ton of franchises underneath me, or you know what I mean? I'm not, I'm not making billions of dollars and all of this other stuff. So like I'm just not big enough to matter, I guess, or that my story doesn't matter until
Yeah.
I've, hit this, large capacity.
It's not about how big you are, it's about how relevant you are to the conversation. That is really critical. You can be somebody, and I have seen it happen. You could be somebody who actually does have a big name, and you're trying to enter a conversation and you're throwing your weight around because you're well known, but you really don't have a place in the conversation. Reporters will not highlight you there. It really is about relevance. You could have a business where it's just you and an admin. And if you have the relevant experience and insights and whatnot, they will want to hear what you have to say. So it's really critical that, especially when you're pitching, I mean, and like you said, you know this firsthand, when you are pitching people in the media, if it is relevant and you have put some thought into what you could offer their audience, you have a fighting chance, even if it's just you and, even if it's just you and you fake your assistant, you pretend your own assistant, in emails, you can have media coverage.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's good for people to, to hear, to validate, that sort of reason behind it, because I think we get really intimidated by that, or we think, I think sometimes maybe the other, on the other side of the coin is, do I really want to do this for my business? Because putting myself out there is going to, cause this criticism, because of course it happens so fast these days, right? The
Sure.
the negative press or the negative comments or stuff like that. What is your sort of take on that?
Unless you're like embezzling money or doing something, and if you are, like you need an attorney, not a PR person, maybe both, but that's not my jam. Unless you're doing something like shady, or you're purposely going out there and you're saying like really like polarizing things, most press that drives back to your business is pretty benign.
Hmm.
Like unless you've got like, and I do crisis comms, so I've had a few instances where something has like blown up, and some things no fault at all in my client, just people maybe that they were like associated with had bad press or whatever. It's not something that happens regularly to people who are not like if you're not Tim Cook like drunk tweeting, at 2 a.m., reporters aren't going to care. I think what you're thinking of, and maybe that happens more, is social media discourse for sure, because I see people who have small businesses, or even like businesses, but just not, well known in the mainstream. You know, if you're posting on social media and you're engaging in conversation, sure, you could have people come at you in that way. But as far as like going out there, putting yourself out there, having those conversations with the reporters, all of that is very controlled. You're controlling the narrative there. If you're doing something crummy, they're great researchers. So I wouldn't recommend pitching reporters if you are trying to hide something. But if you're genuinely not, you really don't have anything to worry about. It's kind of like if you always tell the truth, you'll never worry about being caught in a lie. And the same thing really applies here.
Yeah. Well, and I think, hopefully most of the people that are listening to this are those type of people. But I think, and the reason I brought it up is because I think a lot of people, have said that as like, I want to do that and I want to put myself out there. But yeah, their two biggest concerns when we were kind of like, hey, what are you guys wanting about is, I'm scared to put myself out there to, have to deal with negativity. And I think I'm too small. Right. Like those were the two main things. So I'm really glad that you sort of covered that for us.
You're more at
Um,
risk posting on your opinions on your personal social media than you are a reporter writing a professional piece about your story and your business. So like it's actually kind of like if you're a little bit of a control freak. Now you can't tell reporters what to say. But again, like if you are running a clean business, you have nothing really to hide, and it is a relevant story, work with them and then
right.
post that on social media, you know. Like it's really kind of like the chit chat where I think people have more of the criticism than the actual than media coverage. I do not run into that often.
Well, that's good to hear. So if somebody they're like, okay, I want to do this. I have a story. I'm standing in my expertise. I'm ready to get out there and take a chance. What are some of the things that they should be aware of when they're looking to hire somebody to do their PR? Because like you said, there's so much out there that I think sometimes even just the search can be overwhelming. Are there
Yeah.
some tips that you can give of, maybe either questions that they can ask or things that they should be aware of?
Yeah. So I think that if you feel like your PR, like everything you get is make it or break it, like you are not ready for it. You're not ready for someone else to do it.
Okay.
I do think that early stage companies should absolutely engage in PR, but at that stage, you're looking to build initial connections, tell initial stories. Founders can absolutely do that at the early stages because you need to build some rapport. You can't necessarily wait till you can afford to hire a firm to build that rapport. And it's really important too that reporters get to know you, as well as whoever you bring in for PR. If it
Right.
feels like you have a gun ahead, work on your revenue first. I cannot stress that enough. Work on revenue, work on sales. I would rather have somebody spend a few hours a week doing PR to get their story out and then spending, the rest of the time learning how to cold sell or learning how to whatever. Like I think that's really important. At the early stages, it's about relationship, it's about telling your evergreen founder story about the fundamentals. When you feel like you can breathe a little bit, that is when I think you bring in an expert to really take a look at your comms landscape. What is the messaging you're putting out? How do we amplify this? How do we use PR now to scale? Because I have definitely seen companies that have started small, like I'm saying, like still get the word out there. The minute you open your doors, you should have some sort of public messaging going out. You should have pitches going out. You should have that, but you don't have to saddle yourself with a firm or extra employees. You don't have to do that out of the gate because they want to hear who you are anyway first. And then once you get kind of, once you're kind of rooted and you're a little bit established, then that's when you really want to look at, okay, what message do I want to put out there? How can I use PR to scale? What are we ready for in terms of customers? One of the things, and when I first started in business, I was like, oh, what champagne problems, when people would say you have to be ready to scale, you have to be ready
Mm-hmm.
for that, and I'd be like, bring them on, like it was. And then you learn that that's actually really true. You have to have the bandwidth, you have to have the systems and the capacity. And I was not a systems person, so this was a lesson, hard one. I am a very quick start person, like, cool, I'm starting this company, I'm gonna go get 5 clients and here we go.
Yeah.
But once you feel like you can invest, because the real currency in PR is that you start it and you never quit. It's
Right.
that momentum you build year after year. It's the relationships that you build year after year. It's a culmination of things. Once you can kind of lean back and you're like, okay, not every pitch that goes out is make it or break it like it is when you're first starting. That's when it's time to really expand into a general PR and communications plan, because that will scale. That will scale your business. You just have to be ready for it.
Yeah. And I think that's good too because, I've seen it. I mean, I've done it myself when I had a craft store and I was like, I want to get out there. I want to have something written. And I remember like teaming up with this a nonprofit organization that because it was a craft store, so like knitting, like yarn supplies and
Okay.
that stuff. And the organization was called Knitted Knockers. So it was for
That's
women who
cute.
had lost their breasts but either are waiting for surgery or whatever. And it
Okay.
was it was literally a boob that was knitted and it was like stuffed and all. It was really fun. Like it
That's
was
really
it but it
cute.
was very, very beneficial to these women. And it like I was just like I gotta use this somehow because this is like I love this organization. I would like to bring notice to them. And that was like that's how I used myself to get in with some of the local reporters in the paper to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm doing this thing, that we're bringing these things in. Would this be something that might be like an interest piece to you? Because I would really like to get the word out for people to, kind of donate or maybe even start with this. And we're going to be like a center that like sort of accepts them." And it was
Yeah.
like, it turned into something that was a lot bigger because it was a lot of fun. And I had come check out our knockers written on our window. I was like, when
So
else would I
cute.
ever be able to do that? And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like that really worked well for me, but I really kept that relationship going of like you said, what are the things that they're actually also putting in this paper?
Right.
Because I was able to get in. So what are they writing about? What is drawing them? And do I have something that would, kind of fit into that?
Yeah, you could not have given a more beautiful example of press done really well. And really, it's simple. The best pitches, the ones that have the biggest bang, they're simple. They connect back to the community or the audience in some way. Yes, it was, your business that had partnered up, but it wasn't the Tanya show. Like it was
Mhm.
about this community and helping people. And when you do that, like, and you don't have to be nonprofit, like you could be for profit, but you have to have something that people want to hear and can connect with. And everything you said about the way you did that was perfect. I'm not surprised that it took off. I'm not surprised that you built those genuine relationships. And so I think that everybody listening today, I think that you can think back to something that you do that benefits your community, that benefits your audience. um like, and also I do think that partnering with nonprofits or giving grants away or awards away and things like that, like doing something for somebody always makes for good press too. It really does. And so I think that's a good thing to challenge listeners too. It's like, what can you do? What can you do for somebody that would also bring some positive press in the door, but also show your commitment to your audience other than buy my services, buy my product.
Right. Yeah, because like you said, it's, there has to be a story.
Has to be a story, not a memo, not an internal memo.
So, just before I go, I have a question. Now, you can answer this in a few different ways. So, I'll preface it by saying that either about your business or regarding, about PR in and of itself, because of course you do both. I'm assuming you do PR for yourself
Yes,
as well.
yes, yes.
But
I have to eat my own cooking.
yeah. But is there something that you're like, man, I wish I would have known this, a long time ago? Is there something that you can think of that you were like, yeah, I should have learned that lesson?
So I think my answer to that is kind of comprehensive for like my personal and my professional life, but it's don't try so hard. Like, don't try so hard. Nobody likes a try hard, and it makes things harder. It makes you look ridiculous. It's inauthentic. It's not something that ever sticks. And this gets to be, there are a lot of things in business and in PR that are just kind of challenging. Like it's not the easiest industry. It looks simple. That's why everyone's like, oh, we could do our own. I'm sure you've heard this too. Like, oh, I could do my own this, or I could do my own marketing. It looks so easy, whatever. And they realize it's not. But I also think that when we get in our head and we try so hard, we lose touch with our intuition. We lose touch with that like inner guiding force that we have, and we all have it, that really guides us to the next best thing or what we are supposed to do in a moment. And when we're in our head like that, we really cloud the intuition. We really end up just kind of fumbling the ball. So my advice is don't like have fun with it and don't try that. Don't try that hard. This is not curing cancer. This is in PR we have a saying, this is PR, not ER. Like And so for me, I think, I wanted when I was younger, I always wanted a company, I always wanted whatever. I thought I was like, okay, I'm gonna get this done. And I took it so hard and I made it so serious and and you just don't have to do that. It's better to just not.
Well, and I think, I think back to like even when I started my first company and I thought that's what you did, right? You grew as fast as you could and so we did like you had mentioned
Oh,
before and we scaled really, really fast, which was beautiful. It was, I mean, you couldn't ask for it was nice to
sure.
go from $0 to be like, hey, I proved myself and, be
Yes.
in high incomes and have staff and all of that other stuff. But I remember the day of like pulling up and sitting at my desk and being like, like I am trying really hard and I like nothing that's around me. Like I had the big, like if you like in the accounting world, it was like brown. It was like, or cherry wood was like the thing, right? I had like the big giant desk that I sat in and like a huge chair behind and all of this other stuff. And I thought, I had all these accolades on the wall and, I was just doing everything I thought you were supposed to be doing.
Sure.
And it was so funny that you say this advice because I remember talking to my mentor at the time, and he said the same thing to me. He was like, stop trying so hard and stop thinking that everybody gives a shit about you.
Nobody does. No one
Nobody
does.
cares and nobody's remembering. They're all in their own world. And I thought, it took me a minute, because of course I was young at the time. I was still in my
Sure.
early 20s back then. So like I took that a little bit hard. But then I always think back to it because I took all of my like accolades and diplomas and courses that I had taken down and I put some back up, but I put like I asked my mom, "Do you have like any diplomas of mine?" She goes, "I have a nursery school one." And I was like, "I will take that, please."
That is so cute.
I had it up on my wall for 5 years before somebody went, "Is that a nursery school diploma?"
That
Because
is,
I had taken it out, right? Like I had the,
yes,
diploma that was in the mat and the big frame
yes.
and, all of that other stuff. And I thought, holy crap, I was trying so hard and nobody was paying attention anyway.
No, people only care about themselves, and that is glorious. I mean, that is glorious because when nobody is looking at you and they're not, you are kind of free to do things how you want to do them. There's a freedom in the fact that everybody is self-absorbed, use it, like
Yeah.
so funny. I love the nursery school certificate.
Well,
That
and
is,
I think it allowed me, like, just by doing something of that. And the reason I wanted to share that story, especially with our listeners, is what that started to do for me was to start taking down that wall that I had built so that I could become more authentic in how I was giving advice to people, what I was sharing, how I was running my business. I started doing it the way I wanted to see it instead of, what I thought it was supposed to be. And then I
sure.
realized that my scaling became easier. Like everything became easier because it wasn't like, oh,
Yeah.
if I put this out there, does it look right? Is it the right thing? Does it meet all of these criteria? I was like, just like, I'll throw it out. And if it sucks, we'll just bring it back.
Yeah. No, and the other thing, just to piggyback off that, is definitely something that I would say that my co-founder and I learned early on was that you already know what to do. Like, sure, you learn mechanics and you learn how to utilize new tools and blah, 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 but you already know what to do. And I think it can be so detrimental to your business to take a lot of advice from other people. One of the
Mhm.
things that we stopped doing is we stopped taking, if we obviously had a few people that we still trusted, but we put ourselves, like we trusted ourselves and everybody else was like down here because you can get so turned around. You can end up with a business that you don't even recognize if
Yeah.
because we've had different periods of scaling. And, the first time we scaled, it was like that. You're like, wait a minute, cool. Like, exactly. Like, great. I got all this revenue coming in and I don't recognize this company at all.
Yeah.
There are things I don't even like, I wouldn't even do it this way. And now we have a whole team doing it this way. And it is such a mind scramble in that respect. And so we got really stubborn. And I've always kind of been a really stubborn person in that respect, but like again, you get caught up. I wanted to build something correctly, whatever the hell that means. And so we really prioritized our own intuition, our own thoughts, our own opinion over what somebody else thought we should be doing. Like, for example, like in an agency, they want, the typical thing is you meet with a co-founder or a founder or somebody high up, and then maybe you have a connection with them, and then you just get sent off to a team that you don't, you never met them, you don't know. Sometimes you get, bobbled around to multiple teams. And from the time I started the company, I never liked that idea because I always worked very closely with founders in my previous business. But it was like something that people were like, you have to do this, you can't micromanage everything, and blah, blah, blah. And so I relinquished a lot of, I guess, control. But it felt like relinquishing the part that I really loved, which was being the touch point, like being that the contact and being involved in the client work. And one day I just took it back. I was like, this is not working for me. I want, if you meet with me and you're like, yes, I really connected with Jenny and I want to work with Pink Shark PR, you're going to meet your team. You're going to meet all of that, but you're also going to be very connected to me. You're going to have meetings with me, And so people thought that that was, believe it or not, people thought that an owner being involved with their clients was just bonkers.
Yeah.
And it has been the best thing to do for our company. And it's sometimes it's the reason that they'll sign with us over another agency. And I can't tell you how many people were against that simple move. And it's
Yeah.
been the best thing. And everybody has a version of that in their own business.
Oh, I think it's so true because even, when I do like consulting and coaching, everybody's like, no, you got to scale so that,
And
everything goes
outsource.
evergreen. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like,
Yes.
I don't want to do that. That's like, because I was like, when I help somebody and a light bulb goes off in their head, 18 go off in mine, right? Because something that they said, and then, my brain starts going, oh, you could do this and you could do that. And like, so I'm like, I realized when I removed myself from that client interaction, I
Sure.
lost all of the creativity because I was pulling from all of these interactions and doing the work and remembering what it was like, right? You forget, you remove yourself so much, and then you're like, I don't remember how, kind of crappy. And I always say that to all of my clients, make sure you go and do the crappiest job at least
Yeah.
once a
I love
quarter
that.
so that you remember what that's like. So when you get mad that it's not being done properly, you can actually say, this is kind of how I want it. And I love that you mentioned this because I think it's so important for people to understand that the way you want to build your business is
Mhm.
the correct way and can be the correct way.
Yeah.
You can create that,
Yeah.
there is no cookie cutter for entrepreneurship. It
It's
just,
so true. And I was so allergic forever to the words outsource and scale for years after
yeah,
that. I was like, that's not how I wanted to build it. Yes, I wanted to scale, but I didn't want to do it by not being connected to the heart of my company. Like I have always been a very client focused operator. In my previous business, I worked very closely with founders and, and that's the thing too, I want to tell everybody, like, make sure you do always have the pulse, your finger on the pulse of your client and your customer, because you will never, when they feel connected to you and your energy, because it's like, it's your DNA. The business is, it's the fish stinks from the head
yeah,
down, like, and so if they feel connected to you and supported by you, and they feel like the person who's built the company also still has time for them, you're going to have clients. Like my clients have been with us for years, like, and I know a lot of agencies have a lot of turnover. So that kind of like slowing down, I kind of had to be like, no, I can't scale like this anymore. This is not working. And to a lot of people, it looked like I was slowing things down, but instead I was really building like a deep rooted connection with our customer base, because retention is sales, client retention is sales. And it was so unfulfilling too, to get to that point and be like, I am very disconnected and I feel like I'm just the money machine for the company,
yeah.
and that is not, and I love money. I will be the first one to tell you that. But
I'm with
money,
you. I love it too. I think it's
but
pretty and I keep it.
yes, but money, when it is born out of fulfillment, is priceless. It
Yeah.
is priceless to get paid while you're being fulfilled. And so I'm really glad that we were able to touch on this, because so many people are trying to build a business the way their coach or their mentor or somebody else is telling them to do it. There's probably 20 people in a Facebook group right now complaining that they tried the 12-step system and it didn't work, and they posted just like so and so and it didn't work. And it's like, that's not gonna work. It's not how you're meant to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so true. And I think that's true, across every single industry that you like, that's straight across the board.
Yes.
Because what works for one doesn't necessarily, work for the other. And I've had plenty of meetings with clients that I've said, hey, like, I'm not the one for you. You
Yes.
need somebody who is very nurturing, who is very caring, who is, going to kind of tell you that you're pretty every day and that you're doing a good job. And and I know somebody who is perfect for you, that is an amazing coach that is going to be able to give you. I am not that person. And I'm just going to make you feel bad because I'm a very straight talker. If you say
Sure.
something stupid, I'm going to tell you it was stupid. Like, and so we're just not a match. And
Sure.
like we've been saying, there were so many people who were like, you mean you say no? And I'm like, yeah, did you know you could fire people? Like, you can fire your clients. You could be like, hey, I just don't. And it doesn't have to be because there's anything bad. I've let clients go just because I'm bored of them. Like, it's not, but there's no challenge. They don't really need me at the level that
Sure.
they're at right now.
Sure.
They can have somebody, and I've said to them, look, I'm going to send you to somebody else that's going to be a lot cheaper than I am, but is going to give you exactly what you need right now because you're set, you're ready to go. We've got
Sure.
all your SOPs in place. Like, you just don't need me anymore. I feel great that they're
Sure.
like, I'm never leaving you. That's to me, that's success. When a client's like,
Absolutely.
absolutely not, I'm not leaving you. I'm like,
Yes.
oh, I did good. Yay. you know?
That is my favorite. And I think what you said is so important to highlight because I think as business owners, we start these businesses because we desire freedom. We desire
Right.
freedom. And then people get, they allow themselves to stay in expired relationships. Like a client maybe is no longer a good fit, or maybe it's tumultuous. Maybe a client has berated you or has yelled at you or something has happened, there and people don't want to move on because they're afraid of money. And I know this is something, obviously that is in your, realm of expertise, but there is such a thing as miserable money,
Hmm.
and miserable money is just that. And it doesn't grow the same way. It doesn't enrich, it doesn't flourish, it doesn't lead to fulfillment. And so if you look across your client roster, or if you have dread or whatever, and you look at something and you're like, this makes me feel bad. That's miserable money. And that you don't have to stay with that. And if you release miserable money, you have room then for something much better, more fulfilling, probably will pay more and will be a great client. And I think that women especially hang on to relationships in their business that are no longer a fit, because of the financial, and I understand, like, things have been up and down and whatnot, and people are very, there's a lot of fear going on about money right now, but you won't get ahead sticking to miserable money. And I love what you said, that it is okay to move on. And in some cases, it's really necessary for the health of your business to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just talking about it more, like you said, to give people permission, not only in that aspect, but like you said, in especially women, because a lot of our listeners are women, that it's okay to stand and say, hey, I'm an expert. I'm really good at this. And I have something to say.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of this. Now, I know there's a person who's like, I am an expert. I have something to say,
Yay.
but I need help saying it. How do they get a hold of you to see if you guys would be a good fit together?
That is such a great question. So I am a Capricorn on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the only social media platform that I use. It is stereotypical to my astrological sign. And so finding me, Jenny Beres on Pink Shark PR has a page too, but really everything just comes through my page. So, and I check all my messages and I'm very, very active on there. So that would be the best place to connect with me. You can always fill out a form at our website, pinksharkpr.com, but LinkedIn is just very easy.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure we have both of those links for it in our show notes so you can quickly find Jenny and get this rolling. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being so open and honest. It was just a lovely conversation, and I so
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you for hosting. This was amazing.
One of the great things about this conversation that I hope, no matter where you are in your business, that you gain from it is that stories are so important. And if you've been a long time listener, I've always said that people consistently connect with stories. And it's one thing that we all have, which is the great thing about just being a human being. There's stories in everything that you do. So, like Jenny was saying in the episode, you already have everything you need, and that includes the stories that can help you. So, I hope that you head to our blog post. We're going to have some more information and a couple of other links of ways that you can see sort of the way Jenny works and some of the amazing stuff that she's doing already, and as well so that you can connect with her. So, if you have any questions or, you're even just curious about what having a PR agency for you or working with Jenny is going to look like, you're going to have that. So I hope you take this opportunity to do a tiny little bit of homework. I would like you to sit down and I would like you to think of two stories that you have. Now, go back into the episode and listen. Remember what Jenny had said. It's not stories that are just pitching a product or a service that you have. It's not like just showboating who you are. One of them can definitely be your founder story. Why did you do this? What drove you to it, kind of thing. And just try to think up two. You don't have to have the whole story written out. It can just be like, I remember this, or this is why I did this. And just start the process of getting your brain thinking about all of the stories that you have inside that need to be shared with the world that can help them. So, that is your homework for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please, if you have any other things that you're curious about or you want to learn more about it, just like how this episode happened, one of our amazing listeners, Amanda, had sent us an email saying, hey, I would love to learn more about PR and what that actually looks like. And this episode came. So, Amanda, thank you so much for your email. I hope you are tuning into this episode and you enjoyed everything. I can't wait to hear from you guys again, and tune into the next episode. It is going to be a solo episode and we're going to be talking about a different way to look at your money. So I'm excited to share that. And no matter what it is that you're doing today, make sure that above all, you take time to have fun, because as I will always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?